The
Teamon Wells, born March 9th, 1922, the son of James Washington Wells and Mary Alice Wells, born in Kentucky, Edmonton County, Kentucky, where I grew up. This is the way I looked then. I was a little bit younger than I am now. As you can see from the date on the bottom of this, down there on my chest down there, you can see that it's been a few years. And anyhow, that's on August the 3rd, 1940, I left Kentucky to join the Army. I'll come over after a while and talk a little bit about that, but I just want you to see here the way I started out. That was me, Teamon Wells, back in 1940. And it's the same, in 1945, I had spent 18 months in the hospital from serious war injuries, wounds. I was received some 50 caliber bullets plus a hand grenade in France, and we're going to get around to that. We're going to talk about that a little later. But you can see how much weight I lost at the time I was in the hospital. I looked kind of like a skinny Frank Sinatra there. So that was the picture was taken at Greensboro, North Carolina. I came home for a 30-day leave, and some people at a store up in uptown, they was very polite with us soldiers back in those days. They said, "Hey, soldier, come in, let us take your picture. It won't cost you nothing." So I just stepped in to take my picture, and this is a picture that's taken right here. And that was back not too long before I got out of the hospital. But that's me. And that was me, too, a little earlier. And I just wanted, while I got this here, go over here and just look at a couple things here. These are my armies I served in, and this is my war passport I had to carry all the time in my divisions. I'm going to go over this starting at the top of here. That is a Bronze Star medal. I won that. I got that particular medal for knocking out 2 German machine guns in Sicily by myself with my machine gun. And of course there's the World War II in there. And in these medals, ribbons here, I'd have to get a paper and tell you what all of them does represent now. I got them for different things. Anyhow, we'll just, of course that top one there is a Purple Heart, and on this ETO ribbon here, European Theater of Operations, I got several Oakleys and arrowheads on that. They stand for major invasions and campaigns. And the one ribbon right proud of there too is the one on the bottom right there. That was a medal I won as a foreign medal there. I won that from the French government. That's a French Bronze Cross. And I will tell you how I got that one. After we landed in North Africa, the Germans were under the occupation, the French were under the occupation of the Germans, but the Germans withdrew and left them to fight us there for a while, and we gave them an ultimatum. They could either surrender, come over on our side, or take a fight. And they had a certain length of time to do that. And thank goodness they decided not to fight, they decided to surrender. And after that, of course, they had no weapons, anything that they could fight with. We sure wouldn't let them fight with German weapons. So our government decided our country decided to train them how to use our weapons, and we'd furnish them weapons to fight. They were going to fight on our side. And I was one of the ones picked to train German officers, French officers, so they could train their men how to use our weapons. By being a machine gunner myself, I had the job to teach them about our machine guns, how to use them, how to go in action, what to do, how to handle those guns. And that was pretty nice. I was just a sergeant back then, and getting to put those officers through the training, making them get down in the dirt and crawl like I did when I was a recruit, made me feel pretty good. But anyhow, that's the French Foreign Cross. And under that, of course, is the Combat Infantryman's Medal. And that's my Purple Heart. And over here is a medal that Margarita said, my youngest daughter says, I can't figure out how you got that one. So that must have been the hardest medal that you got. So that's good conduct. I said, well, it did take me about 6 years. That is my division insignia, the 9th Division. And to the right of it is a little medal there. It's got a falcon head on it. That's my regimental insignia, the 39th Infantry. Of course, that's my staff sergeant, Shivers. That's what the rank I held was discharged. And there's a postage stamp with Hitler's picture on it. And on down here in this corner here, I put something I'm rather proud of. Is my oldest daughter, Judy. They sent me a picture of her on her first birthday when she's just 1 year old. And I was in Sicily when I received that, so I had a pistol with clear handles on it, and I taken her picture and put it under my pistol handles, and I carried her through the war. That was a private pistol I carried under my belt, not on my side. And over here, I'm going to try to put my finger where it is and let you see if I can. If I can find my finger here. It's here somewhere. Hey, no way. I know I got a finger somewhere. I don't know. See? Yeah. Yeah. I can't show you that. It won't take up. I can't see my finger. Okay, anyhow, right in the bottom left corner, there's a little boy there behind a machine gun. And that there little pine tree is growing right up from the machine gun barrel. And it shows a boy laying behind that machine gun. That's what was painted on a day room oil from my picture that was made while I was putting on a demonstration with President Roosevelt. And when I got through demonstrating my machine gun, showing how we went into action, out of action, all that kind of stuff, I stood up at attention in front of him. He was parked there at the curb in his car, and he gave me a big old salute. It made me feel kind of good, thinking about an old backwoods Kentucky farm boy being saluted by his president. Anyhow, this guy was an artist. He drew most of this stuff just by remembering what everything looked like. He drew it on the day room wall there. And that writing down at the bottom is in France. It's what goes wrong with our regimental insignia. And by the way, I was in Company E, the 2nd Battalion. And that's the 5th Army insignia. That's what I served in Africa. This is 7th Army. I served in that army in Sicily. And that is the 1st Army, that big A there. I served in that in France. That's my original dog tags there. And that's a B letter there I wrote my dad in Park City, Kentucky while I was overseas. Well, that's, I guess, about enough for that. And that's my War Department panel. Whether I've mentioned that or not, passport there. I had all my information, my height, weight, color, hair, eyes, and everything on that. Rank, name, and serial number, and all that kind of stuff. So that there is a 7th Division there. It's got 7 steps on each side of that if you count them. So I'm going to move along now and come over and sit and talk a little bit, since you got some little idea there about a few things. So we'll take another look at the boys there. There's a young boy, and there's a little later. Yeah, I look a whole lot different than that now. I'll show you. See an old man over there after a while, sitting in that chair. So we'll talk to you later. Well, I'm back. Taking a little break there. Got my pictures kind of out of the way here, so I wouldn't knock them over. I didn't want to break them. Just give you a little idea about the outfits I was in. I served in, of course, one division, one company all the way through the war, 9th Division, Company E, 39th Infantry, and the 4th Platoon, which is a light weapons platoon. We had the 3 rifle squads and 1 light weapons. The light weapons platoon, we had 3 rifle platoons and 1 light weapon platoon. And the light weapons had 2 sections in it. One was 60mm mortars, and the other section was 30 caliber air-cooled machine guns. And I was, of course, in the machine guns through most of the war. And all but 2 weeks in the machine guns, I was either squad leader or section leader. And of course we had 2 machine guns, we had 2 squads. And the 2 weeks I was a machine gunner, I went to town. We had got a little break, and I got into a little spat in town, and so come back a little bit disorderly too, and, you know, kind of celebrating. I got busted down to buck private, which I kind of enjoyed being a private there for a while. But doggone it, they didn't let me stay private very long. They made me sergeant and give me back my section, which I kept all the way through Sicily. And Frog Woods, my buddy, back during peacetime, he was in charge of the mortars section, and we would give support for the riflemen. Of course, I would be in front of Frog with my machine gun, he'd be back further and with his mortars, and he could lob his mortar shells over me and over the riflemen and onto the enemy. And of course I would be fighting directly with the enemy, and I was mostly at counting their machine guns. It would be kind of like a battle between the 2 Army's machine guns. My machine guns against theirs, because the machine guns does so much damage. We had to try to quieten them. They tried to quieten us down, we tried to quieten them down. That's what it boiled down to. And to give our riflemen some more of a chance to advance forward. And it was that way all the way through North Africa and Sicily. And when we left Fort Bragg to go overseas, we first went to New York, and there's where we had that their War Department passports made, and we had to sign a card that we had reached our destination safely and all that stuff. And finally we got loaded on our ships and we headed out on the Atlantic, and we had to, it taken us about, I don't know how many days, but it seemed like 30 days to get to England, because we had to zigzag all over the oceans to get over there because of the German submarines. They had nests all in the Atlantic Ocean. And at this time they had German submarines right along our coast here of North Carolina and other places, and they were sinking our ships, and we had heavy casualties along our own coast. And this was before the war was ever declared. They had those there. People in the American people didn't know about this. And the bad part was, I went in August 1940, August the 3rd. We wasn't prepared. We didn't have the weapons. We didn't have the material. Everything we had was obsolete. Part of the equipment we had was World War I stuff, and we didn't have weapons to train with. We had to train with wooden guns and wooden machine guns, wooden rifles, and some of our gear had to be changed. And boy, we had a lot to do in a hurry there. But anyhow, that's what we had to do before we got going overseas. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. I'll go back for a minute. You know, I volunteered and went in before the war. Then after I was in a while, they had the selected service, and I was in. I done had my basic training, and I helped train those boys. And they were boys. They was anywhere from 18 to 20 years old. And that's about the average age of all of us at that time. So anyhow, we did get to train some extra manpower before we really took off, so that did help a whole lot. Anyhow, when we left New York, we went to Ireland, and they had to do something with our ship. It wasn't loaded some way to suit them, and they had to unload and reload our ship. I was told later, because we had been first, was supposed to go to the Pacific, and it was prepared to fight the Japanese instead of the Germans. I don't know whether that's true or not. But anyhow, we got to stay in Ireland a while, and we enjoyed that. We had freedom there. We had a lot of liberty. We got to go into Southern Ireland there and celebrate like soldiers do, so forth and so on. It was a beautiful country, and some of the places were kind of beautiful too, until we kind of mess them up a little bit sometime. We knew we was going into combat, and we wasn't very particular what kind of conduct we had. Don't have to tell you too much about that. But anyhow, we finally got our ship refigured, loaded, and we left Ireland, and we headed for out to sea again, and when other ships joined us. We had about 800 ships in our convoy, and we had to zigzag, of course, again, because the Germans were all over the place, had those doggone submarines, and that's what takes so much time. Anyhow, where the Leeds town was sunk there off of the coast of Spain, and I mean it went down. The Thomas Stone, the troop ship I was on, the USS Thomas Stone, was torpedoed right there near the Rock of Gibraltar, right off the coast of Spain. We had our whole battalion on that ship, and we got torpedoed about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I know when that torpedo hit, it hit right in the stern of the ship, and it blew out a hole which you could drive a pickup truck through. And that back in there is where all the cooked personnel, kitchen personnel and all, and wiped out practically all of them. But there wasn't very many casualties with the soldiers. We was up towards the bow end of it, mostly front. Anyhow, the ship, the back end just went down, way down, and the front end come plumb up out of the water. The bow did. Stern went down. And so we had all of our equipment on there, of course, and they did what you call trimming the boat. They pumped the front part of it full of water to pull it down, kind of level it down a little bit, so we could get some of our equipment off and get off ourselves. They had small landing boats on that troop transport that we was going to make the invasion from that ship with those small boats. So we had to get off and get in, mount those boats, get in them, and take what equipment we could. And of course, the Thomas Stone was just sitting there, and of course they didn't stop for you, the convoy didn't. And when if you got torpedoed or something, they kept going. They had orders to move on. But one destroyer did stay there long enough for us to get out of sight, and running around and around that ship, so it wouldn't try to keep that. Reason they did that, the German submarine that torpedoed that, they usually go under the ship and stay until a certain time, and then they'll come up and machine gun the survivors that's in the boats. And that's what the destroyer was trying to do, to keep that submarine under the water until we were safely out of the way. And on the small boat, they had what they call a Marlin machine gun, which I guess was a good gun, but I had never seen one, much less fire one. And by me being a machine gunner, I was assigned to take charge of the machine gun in case that submarine come up, was to fire the machine gun back at them. Of course, the riflemen all had their rifles too. We'd all been probably shooting at them, but I was chose to be a machine gunner out in my particular boat out there. We didn't go far like that until they had diesel engines in those little boats, and they started knocking off, and we would throw ropes out and start towing the little landing boats, barges that had knocked off until we just was almost at a standstill. We wasn't getting nowhere. So many of them was knocking off, and we were 100 miles from Algiers when we first started, and they just wouldn't take all that rough treatment out there in the middle of the ocean. So a British corvette finally come along and picked us up. We got on a British corvette, and it was just a whole battalion of us with our guns, our little ammunition stuff we could salvage, and it was almost just standing room only. I mean, we was on there like that. You couldn't hardly squat down. There was so many on that. But anyhow, after we got on the boat, the British Navymen used their ack-ack guns, and what landing boats were still out there, they shot them and sunk them, so the Germans wouldn't know what happened to them. And some of the sailors that was assigned to those boats cried when they seen their boats that they was in charge of shot, because they had been trained to drive and pilot them, and what to do with them, all that stuff, and just like they're dead or something, or they just saw them really cried when they sink the little landing boats there, barges. I know that a lot of water was so rough out there that they was passed out in them, and I guess in all of them, but some of the soldiers was passed out just laying in the bottom of that boat I was in. I did pretty good, because I was up there in the air and the fresh water and salt water was hitting me in the face, and I was holding on that machine gun, and I didn't get sick. In fact, I never did really get seasick. And Some of them got so sick they passed out, and some was crying, some was praying to die and everything. Even the sailor himself got sick. The one that's supposed to have been piloting the boat, he got sick, and one of the soldiers had to get up and take over. And that's how rough it was out on the water. But we made the invasion from the British corvette. We landed in the docks of Algiers, right there in the docks, on time. In other words, we hitchhiked 100 miles and made the invasion on time. But I tell you, we was kind of weather beaten a little bit, though. We wasn't in A1 shape, but we was still going. And I remember one little incident happened there right after I got off the ship, and I had my machine gun squad, and we were starting to go out in the main, I guess in the main part of town from the docks. And I heard an airplane coming, I looked and it was a German fighter plane. And I'd been taught in training to never shoot a plane coming towards you down low, because if you hit him, he could just start dropping and fall right on you. And don't shoot him when he's directly over you, because he might drop a bomb on you. He might blow a bomb out of his bomb bay or something else. Or, you know, and when they're down low like that, you don't know where they might hit. So I kept my gun right on him by me being a machine gunner for so long. I thought, now I'm good. I'm going to get me a plane to start with. That's going to be nice. I'm going to get me an airplane. I put that gun barrel right on the belly of that plane right before I knew that German pilot to be setting. And I just kept it right over, and he went right straight over. And when he started away from me, I pulled that trigger. The gun jammed. Couldn't fire, but we could get salt water in my machine gun, and it had froze the boat, and the boat wouldn't work down. And so I didn't get my plane. Anyhow, he went on unharmed, but I could have tore his belly of his plane all to pieces if that gun went apart, because he wasn't about treetop high. I could see the rivets on the bottom of that plane. It was so low. And he wasn't going that fast either back then. We didn't have jets back then. But anyhow, I missed my airplane. Anyhow, we went on, and in Algiers, there was a whole lot of French soldiers there. They was under the occupation of the Germans, and they was under German control, and they, at the time, to us, was the same as Germans. They were our enemies, just like the Germans were. But the Germans withdrew out of Algiers and built a defense line out of Algiers and left the French soldiers there to hold us or stop us or try to delay us or whatever. I don't guess they cared if every one of them got killed. And that's who we faced first. We faced the French soldiers before we did the Germans. I mean, the French soldiers before we did the Germans. They gave them an ultimatum that had given so long to surrender, come over on our side, or take a fight. We went in position, and all of us had targets, and ready to be, we were going to open fire on them at the end of that time if they didn't surrender. I know my particular target was, I had my machine gun zeroed and lined up on a radio station that was on top of a flat building. And I could see them real good. They was just walking around, talking, smoking cigarettes. One would crank that radio, you know, and all that stuff, you know, and just like we wasn't there. And I was laying there watching through my sights on my machine gun with my finger on the trigger, waiting to get the word. And just before the time went out on them, they surrendered, come over on our side. I didn't get to pull the trigger. It was maybe a little bit disappointing because that's one kind of interested. I've been training so much in machine gun, I was kind of anxious there wanting to get started. Lucille come in. Hi, Lucille.
Happy.
And it started to see I could do with my machine gun. It was my toy. But I didn't get to use it then. Of course, it wasn't long till we did because. But before we really got into combat, before we got into combat, I'm a quick Lucille, like she makes me laugh. Before we got into combat, of course, there was the French. They was armed with German weapons. And of course, they couldn't fight us with those. We wouldn't allow that, of course. And they agreed to, if we would train them how to use our weapons, the French weapons, they would join us in a fight for freedom. So, of course, our country, our government agreed to do that. And the different ones were picked in different weapon areas, like I was a machine gunner in a machine gun section, so they picked me to teach officers how to use them, our machine guns. And of course they was picked for riflemen and other boys and mortars and different things, you know, but I chose, of course I was a machine gunner in the machine gun section. I got to train those officers, and I got to kind of kick out of it to put them through the paces like I had to go through. When I was taking basic training, getting down in the mud and the dirt, crawling, getting all dirty and filthy. They had this thick and span uniforms on when we first started. When I got through with them, they looked like they'd been stoned up through a brush pile. So, but I told them, because I knew it was for our benefit for them to learn and to know all they could about our weapons, so they could have. The more they knew about them, the more help we'd get from them later. Anyhow, for that, General de Gaulle was in charge of the officers that we were training, and he was there. And I got to see him a whole lot. And in fact, later, all of us instructors that worked for the French officers was awarded the French Bronze Cross. You know, that's the only foreign medal I got. I got several other medals, but that was the only one. I got the French Bronze Cross, and General de Gaulle, who later became president of France, he's the one who pinned the medal on me. That was nice, an honor. But of course, after that, we moved forward and made contact with the Germans, and we had our skirmishes all through Africa, and we fought in open country, had to fight in the mountains, had to fight on the deserts. Oh, I tell you, the deserts were something. During the day, you'd burn up, and at night you could wear an overcoat. It's hard to get used to it. I know we were told before we went over there that we might take nosebleeds. If a lot of people went into Africa, and sometimes almost bleed to death. The nose, the climate somewhere would affect your sinuses or something. And I'd had trouble before on my nose bleeding, and I figured, well, it'd sure get me, but it seemed to cure me. I got over and I didn't have any trouble at all, my nose bleeding. So I guess I got helped in that way. And we went on. I know we had so many battles. I know one time we was going to change fronts. The way we would do, we didn't have enough troops in there to have a very long, solid line for combat fighting. What we would do, we'd hit them pretty hard at one place, and then we'd back up, and we'd be transported maybe several miles and hit them at another place and make the Germans think that there was more troops there, get them confused what it were. This particular time, we did that, but they didn't have enough truck drivers, regular truck drivers, and I had went to truck driving school at Fort Bragg and had that truck driver's license. So they asked, and I didn't ask, they told me to drive one of the ammunition trucks. So I didn't mind that too bad. It was a change from fighting and what I'd been doing. And so I had an assistant driver, but I enjoyed driving so much I wouldn't even let him drive. I drove all the way. I know up in the mountains there, in one place we hit some ice. It's cut cold up there. And that truck went sideways and I slid off the road and went down the embankment, and I was loaded to the gills with ammunition on the back of that ammunition carrier. I put that thing in four-wheel drive and I started throwing dirt. I spun that thing around, got back up on the road. And I never did check to see if what I lost out in the truck, but after we got to where we was going, I checked and I was 1 can of gasoline I had lost, slung off the truck. That's all I lost. And I thought that's pretty good. But I thought, by me driving the truck, I would be excused going into that particular battle that we was heading into. And, but I wasn't. They told me to join my section. And they had something for us to eat. They had some bologna and cheese, 1 slice of bologna and cheese. We hadn't ate anything on that trip. That's all we had to eat. And so, of course, you got to take orders. So I joined my section. I thought I was going to get a breaker just at one time. So we had this particular hill that we were supposed to take. And we had it timed just right that we was going to hit this hill just before daylight. And the infantrymen, the riflemen, was going to make a bayonet attack on the German positions. Bayonet attack. And so we were easing up that hill. And of course, the riflemen was in front of me in my section. The motor section was behind me. But it happened that they had the timing off, and we started getting daylight, and the Germans seen us. And while we wasn't in no position to fight right that second, they opened up everything they had on us. And I know. First, I had one machine gun close to me. I had one of my gunners behind it, and I was there close to him, and he got one of the bullets from the top of his head. He's laying down behind his machine gun. One bullet hit him right on the top of the head. So and by being an experienced gunner myself, I rolled him out of the way, and I jumped behind the machine gun, and I started firing it. An artillery shell hit right in front of me there somewhere, and it taking the gun right out in front of me, threw it up in the air, and knocked the tripod off of it. There I was without a weapon. And so what few riflemen that didn't get killed or wounded during the first firing there was trying to get back to a safe zone. And when I looked around, what few I had left in my squad was the riflemen that done got by us, and we was kind of there by ourselves. So it wasn't nothing but us to do. We didn't have any weapons, of course. We didn't carry nothing but 45 pistols. We didn't carry no rifles because we was in a weapons platoon, and you couldn't use a rifle and have a machine gun, so we carried pistols, 45. So this one boy and I, we started running to the rear, zigzagging, and running, trying to, and there's Germans just shooting at us every which way. Artillery 88s were going off. Has no 188 hit right at my feet, and it blew me up in the air about 8 feet. And it seemed like for a few seconds, I just had my arms out like this, and I was looking down at the ground, and I fell right down in down in where the hole where the shell went off, the crater, and fell on a hot piece of shrapnel and burned a blister on my stomach. It ripped the watch off my arm, concussion did. It threw my mouth open and locked my jaws. I couldn't get my mouth closed. Blood run out my nose and my mouth and ears. And but I wasn't hurt. I was just in that shape. I could still get on my feet. And this boy, he escaped that. He was a little ways from me. And we both got up and we started running again, and it was a bank there. And we both just died right over that little bank. So we laid long ways behind the bank, and we had our faces right together. And the boy never had looked right straight at me. But when he looked at me and seen my mouth was in such a shape, as wide open blood was running out my mouth and nose and all, it's like he fainted. And I could not close my mouth. And I don't know what happened for a long time there. And the Germans started opening up on us with a machine gun, and we were just about 6 inches below the top of the bank, and those bullets were cutting the top of the bank and right over the top of us. Our artillery finally opened up in the rear on the Germans where they had come down the hill and pushed them back a little bit. They let up on the artillery, and here come the Germans again. This time they got so close we was hearing them talk. I had a picture of my wife and a picture of my daughter. I had one daughter at that time, Cutie, in my bill folder, and I knew what the Germans had done with pictures and things, and with soldiers' wives, if they captured them, what they did to them. They put them up with targets, and they'd use them for toilet paper or whatever, just laugh. And I just wanted to make sure that if they got me in any way, whether kill me or captured me, they wouldn't find my bill folder, so I buried it under my stomach, put some dry leaves over it, and that's all I could do, just raise up enough to take my fingers and dig out a little hole. When they would go back, and I thought maybe the chances of us getting out a little further, I'd dig my pocketbook up. I must have buried that pocketbook about 3 times. And after it got dark, this boy and I, we knew we couldn't walk out there. We had to crawl out because they could see us if we got up on our feet. So we crawled on our hands and knees through this field. I don't know how far we really crawled. But anyhow, they was really surprised to see us. It was about 8 o'clock before we got back, they had got back to some of them wanted to survive. And found out we had crawled through a minefield. That field we crawled through. If we just missed the mines. I don't know how we did it, but we crawled on our hands and knees through a minefield. But they thought we had been killed with the rest of them. We lost almost 2/3 of our company right that morning. I imagine I'd say 15, 20 minutes. 2/3 killed or wounded. That was one of the real bad skirmishes we was in because we had heavy casualties. And I know later on we was fighting in the mountain area down there where they had those big dug-ins in the mountains and the caves, shelters dug out, and they had enough ammunition and stuff stored in the mountains to fight a 10-year war almost. We had to fight them in that area, and we was up on this one mountain, and Germans surrounded the mountain, and cut us off, and for 13 weeks we was on this mountain. They couldn't get no ammunition to us, they couldn't get no food to us, they couldn't get no water to us. We'd put our raincoats out on bushes and try to catch a little water and a dew or something, and we to drink, and we couldn't shave, we couldn't wash. And every day they'd lob artillery shells on us, and they'd try to drop supplies to us in parachutes, but they'd miss us and go into the German positions. They'd get it. They had a lot of mules over there, pack mules that's trained to follow trails and things, and they tried to slip pack mules through the German lines with food and rations on them, and the Germans would shoot the mules and take rations. We couldn't get any supplies of any kind, anything. 13 weeks was like that. And I know a lot of boys had some, I wasn't but about 19 years old. I didn't have much beard. And some of them had, heavy beard, and they looked real good. They had nice long beard. Mine stuck out like a scared porcupine. I was the ugliest, nastiest looking thing you ever seen in your life, and so I was jealous of all those boys that had a good heavy beard, and they looked good. I mean, they looked all right. And mine just stuck back straight out into what little I had. But anyhow, we got out, finally got off of there. They finally got a gap in the Germans' line until we got off of the mountain. They taken us, let's get back to the rear somewhere where they hooked up some water lines and some pipes and let us take a shower. And we only had 1 minute. We had timed us. We stay in that shower 1 minute. When we pulled our shoes off, our socks had rotted in our shoes. And we got to take a shower for 1 minute. But boy, I tell you, it felt good. And we would drink our water while they was washing us off too. Well, it was like Christmas to us. Anyhow, that was another time there in Africa. We had several pretty tough battles. We lost a lot of boys in Africa. We went on down to the deserts and shot up that's on the living desert there, fighting. But that place where they was dug in and had those big had those big dugouts in the mountains where they had all them supplies. We run them out of there, out of the mountains, down into the plains area where General Montgomery had his tank divisions. They surrounded the Germans, and the Germans surrendered, and General Montgomery got all the credit for that. We didn't get any, and I have not seen a paper or write-up or anything about the 9th Division doing what it did there. The only thing that I have heard or seen or ever write-up is nothing since the war was General Montgomery got all the credit for what he did there, and we would want to run them out and run them down to him, and all he did really was just surround them, and he got the credit. We didn't get no credit whatsoever. And we lost in that area a lot of boys too. Good boys, good soldiers. Anyhow, we went on around and come back around, and I remember Bizerti too. We had a pretty good time there. We waited till the Germans started eating. They was in their barracks there in Bizerti and eating. They didn't know we was that close to them. We hit them right quick while they was eating. We run them out of the barracks. And I went through one of the barracks, and the food was still on the table. Some of it was hot, and I reached down and get a handful of something as I went through there. Anyhow, that was close to the end of the war in Africa. Of course, we immediately, they withdrew. A lot of them went over into Sicily, where there's a lot of Italian soldiers. So we, on July the 15th, now we hit North Africa November the 8th, 1942. Then we invaded Sicily. I was in the 7th Army. in Sicily, when we invaded Sicily, in the 5th Army in Africa. And in July the 15th, 1943, we invaded Sicily. I know it was night, and we were going across. It wasn't far from Posterity over to Africa, over to Sicily, just a short distance, kind of like the English Channel. Wasn't far. And we was at night, and we was going to make a landing early the next morning, hit the beaches South Sicily, right about the center of the highway. And our paratroopers were going to go in and hit first and soften up the beaches for us. And so we was on our way, and they had orders not to come over our ships, but they did. Their airplanes come right over our ships. Of course, we had orders to shoot. Our Navy had orders to shoot anything that was over us. And they opened up on our own planes, our own paratroopers, and they just blew most of them right out of the air. And very few of them made the landing on the beach. They were supposed to soften up to us, but they didn't get to because they got shot up in SEAL. I forget. I don't know whether there ever a record that ever told about that, but somebody told me it was something like 500 of our boys were killed by our own troops, Navy. I don't know whether that ever made public or not. But anyhow, the ones that survived and come through, they wasn't in very good fighting shape. In fact, we was in there 2 weeks fighting, and they were still coming in. And all raggedy, no clothes on, hardly, half-starved. It was rough on us, our troopers there. Wasn't too good on us. Anyhow, we fought in Sicily. We went to the left. We landed right about the center of south of Sicily. We went all the way to the left end of Sicily, fighting Germans and Italians. And then we come straight back to the center of Sicily towards Mount Etna. In fact, I fought on Mount Etna. And that's where we ended up the war, right near the toe or the boot of Italy. And anyhow, there's one place in Sicily when we were coming back from I'd say the west end of Sicily, going towards the east, we was up on top of this hill, and we were going to spend the night. And of course, you didn't want to get on the skyline because you could be picked up and seen a long ways if you was on the skyline. You had to get on the forward slope of a hill, so you'd have the hill behind you, so you wouldn't be silhouette. You wouldn't have they couldn't see you. So what we did, we just backed up a little bit behind the crest of the hill, because we knew next morning we was going to go over the hill, actually. And I saw a path right there where I had my machine gun section. It was a slick path, like somebody had been used it a whole lot, and I just figured, well, I bet that's going to a spring. And I hadn't had anything to drink and water for a while. So I told my section, I said, I'm going to crawl down that path and take my canteen cup and see if I can find some water down there. Sure enough, I found a spring. So I take my canteen cup and I dipped me out some water and I drank it, and then I got me a cup of water and crawled real easy, didn't want to spill it, and brought it back to where I was at the machine gun, where I was closest to, and set it down. I thought, we had this coffee, some kind of instant coffee that would dissolve in cold water. And you know, cold coffee is better than no coffee. I got to like it pretty good. Anyhow, I'd already drank a whole lot of that water. The next morning, just before we got ready to push over the hill, I decided I'd fix me a cup of coffee. Yeah. So I got my little instant coffee cup, it was in a little tin-like cup, got it ready, crawled over there where my canteen cup was sitting. I looked down in it, and it had 2 or 3 dozen little black tadpoles in there. They're just swimming all in there. It was alive in a kitchen. I said, oh my God, I said, I done drank a bunch of tadpoles. And I wanted that coffee so bad, I taken my handkerchief, and it was kind of beige color, it was so dirty. And I strained those tadpoles out of that water, shook them out of my handkerchief, and made my coffee and drank my coffee in here. I knew if I was going to die from it, I'd die anyhow, because I'd already drank tadpoles. But I tell you, you can go without food as long as you can go without water or something to drink. Now, you got to have something to drink. You get dehydrated, you're in bad shape. I got so dehydrated during Africa one time, my lips just swelled out way great big and broke, busted open. And I didn't think that's awful. I have my stomach growling a lot, but I'd rather have a growly stomach than have busted lips. It was, one place we come into this town, the village, and it was out the edge of it, and there was a well there, and it had a bucket, and just a regular got telephone wire tied onto the bucket. Of course, the fellas run to that well, and one of them started putting the bucket down, and there was an officer, Captain, run up to him and says, drop that bucket in that well, water too. And he said, sir, I'm with some water. He said, you drop some water, and said, I'll shoot you. He says, I'll shoot you. He said, right now. He says, that's the order. Drop that bucket. The Germans would poison those whales. They'd know that we was hunting for water, needed water, and they'd poison the whales, and it wasn't safe. I mean, you look at that water in a well, and they couldn't drink. That was hard to do. But that water could have been poisoned, and it could have wiped out the whole company. The officer was right, but it's hard to take those things. It's hard to do. I know I seen a boy who was in a swamp area. He was in a swamp, marsh area, where he just mud. He would work his foot down in the mud, the marsh, make a hole, pull his foot out, and let that water drain in the hole, and take a canteen cup and dip it out and drink it. Now that's what you do when you get so thirsty. And that's they're in Sicily. Some of the things I don't talk about Sicily, some I do. I'd like to talk about say one more thing about fighting. Anyhow, this hill, the Tadpole Hill, we call it the Tadpole Hill. Next morning we went over that thing. We were going down the forward slope, and there was another hill on the other side. It went up. That's a beautiful country. It has a lot of hills and mountains and all, and shoreline, and that Mediterranean Sea there was, it was beautiful. I loved Sicily, the country. I didn't like what I had to do over there, though. Anyhow, we was going over this hill, and down in the valley part, down at the bottom, where the other hill started up, there was a gravel road, and we were going down towards that road. And I had got acquainted with a boy in England when we was retraining, not in England, but yeah, in England before we made, in Ireland before we made the invasion of North Africa. It was Ireland. He had volunteered for combat duty. He was training boys in Fort Benning, Georgia. Georgian got sick and tired of it. He just volunteered for combat duty, and they sent him over and he joined our outfit. He was a sergeant, and he was a heck of a nice fellow, boy. I liked him. And him and I were going over this hill, going down toward the road, and I had my machine gun section over to my right, going down to the road, and had them wanting them to come up the road, and I was going straight down, and it was going like coming in like this. The Germans had 2 German machine guns over on the forward slope of the other hill, and I'll tell you right there, their machine guns, the ones they had there, they would shoot from 1250 to 500 rounds a minute. That was what's called firepower. My little air-cooled 30 caliber Browning machine gun was shooting from 450 to 500 rounds a minute. That was, I had accuracy. I could take my gun and hit a target, put my bullets where I wanted to go, and they would have a spray area with their gun. They could just cover a whole big area, just, you know. But for they could shoot more bullets quicker, but it wasn't as accurate. My gun wouldn't shoot as fast, but it was more accurate. Sometimes you need firepower, sometimes you need accuracy. If you're going to land it on a beach, going to land on this beach and there's an enemy on that beach, then you want firepower. You want to spray that whole beach, just cover the whole thing, just like you're spraying ants or something other to kill them. But when you got designated targets out there, you want accuracy so you can get on that target. You got to get on it as quick as you can, especially if you're in machine guns. These two German machine guns opened up on our battalion. It was on the forward slope of the hill, no protection, and they were just cutting us all to pieces. In fact, this boy that I said I'd taken a liking to, he was on my left. One of the bullets hit him right between the eyes. I looked down and there he lay. Purple spot. Wasn't even bleeding. Went in. But I imagine there's a hole got big in the back of his head. That just kind of got my Kentucky temper stirred up there right quick. So I run down to the road in my section, was getting pretty close, and I hollered and told him to rush me out that machine gun up there and pull that tripod and the gun out in the middle of that road. Because I had spotted the machine gun, I could see it from where I was. I knew where both of them were. I run out in that road and I set that machine gun up myself, and boy, I cut loose those two German machine guns. They was dug in and was standing up in the hole they was in. They had a ledge in there about this high. They'd step up on that ledge and their head would be up above the ground enough they could see, and they was shooting. Then when you start shooting at them, they just step back and their head was under the, down below, and you couldn't see the head. But what they'd do, they'd open up and I'd make one to drop back, the other one would cut loose on me. So I could see them both, so what I was doing, I was shooting one and I switched over to the other real quick, you know, and I just kept doing that, and boy, I was I tell you the truth, I was using curse words. I was calling them everything I could think of. I was so mad, because they had killed my buddy, that I imagine I was bending that trigger, I don't know. But anyhow, I kept on till I quieted them. They didn't fire anymore. That's better to battalion, get off the hill and advance forward. And that was one of the medals I won there. I got the Bronze Star for knocking out those two German machine guns. But they were really getting after me. I was landing on that gravel road, and they were hitting that gravel, and the rocks were flying all over me. There's a telephone post to the right, and they were hitting, some of their bullets were hitting that telephone post. I had splintered wood all flying hitting me. But I never did let up on that trigger. I kept on till I stopped them, put them out of action. But of course, my write-up I got on that was the heroic action, but it wasn't no heroic action. It was just that old Kentucky temper stirred up. What that was, I was mad. I wasn't thinking about my country. I was just thinking about getting it. So I was pretty rough there for a while. And then I know later on, we come around, circle back around, and we hit Palermo, which is the capital of Sicily. And the Italians were in Palermo. We had Italian soldiers. The Germans were on the outer edge of town. They'd be the Italians, they'd treat them like second class. They thought that They didn't think they could whip us, but they could weaken us down where they wouldn't have to fight too hard to get us, you know. They could cut us down enough that we wouldn't be too strong when we hit them. But the Italians didn't fight quite as hard as the Germans did. They were second classes for us. We were concerned. The Germans they were just born and raised to fight and kill. That's all they wanted to do. Anyhow, we hit the Sicily, Palermo, the capital, and I was going down, had to go down the main street. And I was given cover for the rockets, and his machine gun set up on the edge out other end of the street, and rockets too. And our boys were going in the buildings, dragging out Italian soldiers and their wives, and the children was hanging on to them, and they was screaming and hollering and begging and pleading. But they were really firing. The Germans were really firing. The Italians were really firing at us. So I was laying in the street, and I was firing my machine gun, trying to fight them down on that street down there. And I hear a little racket to my left, and I just glanced over there, and I know there was a little Italian boy. He was, I guess he looked like he was about 3 or 4 years old, dirty, pretty black hair, black eyes. Just the cutest little fella you ever seen. And he looked at me and he smiled, and he couldn't make a V for victory. He just holding his fingers out, so he took his other little hand and made a V for victory. And he held it down like that, and a V for victory. That little fella did. I thought, oh my God, he's going to get killed. And I know I must have bent the trigger on that machine gun. I just covered everything up. I just hit everything that was in sight. I mean, shot at everything in sight down that street. And every time I thought there was somebody might be right in blasted. And after I moved forward, I never looked back. I didn't want to look back because they was throwing a lot of stuff at me, and I didn't want to know for sure whether that boy had killed or not. And I still don't know, but I sure hope he made it. I really do. But I was afraid to look back. I didn't look back there. That's what you run into in war. You run into stuff like this. But you have to do what you have to do. You just know the way around it. That's what separates the men from the boys, I guess. There's a lot of boys went over there when they come home. They did come home, they were men. They wasn't no old boys no more. A lot of them didn't come back too. Like a lot of my good friends over there. Yeah, sure did. Anyhow, that was in Sicily. Sicily, we got to stay over there a while, and we enjoyed it. I would go swimming in the Mediterranean Sea. That water was so beautiful. It was clear and cold and salty. Oh, at first it burned your eyes up, but after you dive down and stay on the water a while and get immune to that salt, you can just look around like you're in this room here looking around. It was big rocks right out in a place called Sicily. It was, that beach was beautiful. We used to go swim out to those big old rocks, be out there and dive off of them, see how far down they could go. I know one time I was going down to a great big old rock, as big as this house here almost, and come face to face with an octopus. Of course, he wasn't an adult, he was a young octopus, but we didn't keep company very long. I got back out there kind of quick. And I know one time I was on the edge of the beach, and the rocks, what were rocks there? Big rocks. I had my feet in the water, and I was just kicking my feet, you know, like you do. And
You look down between my knees and something about big as a gallon bucket come up there between my knees and start taking oxygen, baby oxygen. I didn't stay around there very long either. I kind of got up, left that place. But as far as beauty, it was a beautiful country. You take those mountains were so high, there'd be clouds hanging over the tip of them. You could get in a truck and go up some of those mountains, go up into the clouds. And Mount Etna had been 17 years since it erupted at that time, but still smoke was coming out of it just all the time, just constantly like a smokestack out of it, smoke out of the chimney. And that lava was all over the place. I know we had to fight on that mountain for a while in lava. It's kind of like trying to walk on ball bearings or something and roll under your feet. It was so light and crumbly, you couldn't hardly get along on it. And boy, it had erupted some 17 years ago, and other years too, I guess. But anyhow, that's where we ended up fighting in Sicily. And we did get to stay there a while, recuperate. I got sick with a malarial fever there and was in the hospital a while. We had a good time there in Sicily. I'm keeping time on this tape. I've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes now. So I mean, I got about 2 hours. I got about 15 more minutes to go. Oh, well, I can finish this up tonight. Let's see, it's 11 o'clock. I haven't missed my knees, I guess. Anyhow, take one time. I was pretty high spirited, I have to admit that. And but let me go back to Africa one time. When we got a break there in Africa in Algiers, and then we'll come back to Sicily. I had one out the night before, man and boys. I got pretty top well, thank you. And I like to get into scraps sometime. I really did. I don't mean that no bragging way, but I did. And I didn't mind too much. And back then I was a little man. I was tough as a pine knot. Wasn't like I am now. And I had boxed a lot in the Army and taken a lot of hard training. I was just tough as a pine knot. And that, and as I said, the night before I'd done been out and celebrated. But my buddies come around to him and said, Wells said, let's go down to Algiers tonight. I said, I don't want to go out. I went out last night. I don't feel good. I said, I know what y'all want to do. You want to go out and get drunk, get fights? I said, I don't feel good. I don't feel like it. He said, well, you don't have to drink or nothing. He said, you just go with us. He said, we'd like you to just go with us. He said, just go with us. And they kept begging. I said, okay. But I said, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to stay sober. I'm not going to drink. He said, well, come on, go with us. So we got in some place there in Africa. And we were sitting at this table, about 6 of us. And they had a bunch of bottles on the table, and they were all drinking. And I was sitting right beside a little boy in Czechoslovakia, and he was next to the aisle here. I was sitting beside him, and another boy sitting over here, and my buddy Frog Wood was right over next to the aisle, and 2 more here. And of course, I was just sitting there. So I smoked back then. I smoked a cigarette. I wasn't drinking. And this little Czechoslovakian, he was the meanest little rascal you ever seen. He'd get up, throw back on, hit somebody walking down the aisle, and I'd reach over and put my hand on top of his head and push him back down. Sit down, boy. And I knew that things was going to get a little rough around that because they was getting pretty well brewed up. And Gully, that boy's name, he just kept on. I got tired, aggravated, and I said, let me catch up with y'all. And I didn't use no glass. They just pushed the bottle over to me. Boy, I sat there and I drank out one, reached in another bottle, and I drank. Finally, I think I passed them up, and I was a little further along than they were, I believe. I done caught them and gone ahead of them. And that's been something I didn't intend to do, but I did. Anyhow, I had to go to the little boy's room. Finally, I was coming back up that little aisle there where the gulch was going to hit everybody, and this guy's coming down through there, big old guy, great big guy. He told me to step aside. And, I was got 15 foot tall then, and all that stuff like that. I said, I don't step aside from nobody. He said, you will. I said, I won't. He didn't know he was right there at the table where my buddies were. He had a trench knife under his belt, so he pulled out that trench knife and pointed it at my stomach. He said, you will step aside. I said, I won't. And my buddy, Frog Woods, was looking at him all the time. So he just got up right quick and he reached down like he's picking something up off the floor. He called me, hit that guy right beside my head, and he felt like he was hit with a sledgehammer. And when he hit the floor, he jumped on and stomped him. And while he was stomping him, people back in the other area started throwing quart bottles at us. And so we had a few bottles there of our own, and we started throwing them back. And it was really happening. Then we hear some whistles blowing outside. The MPs were coming. So I don't know, I didn't even know there was a door in the back of that place, but we found one, or we made one. We got out the back of it, all 6 of us. And we got away from that place, and we got up on the street there, uptown, and we're standing on the corner, and we're just talking, good boys, and a little French girl run up in front of me, and she come and slapped my face. It felt good, because my face was like leather, you know, and I tell you, I enjoyed it so much. I'd bend over a little bit so she get a good slap. But the feeling started coming in my face. I thought, I better stop this. I just take my hand, open hand, kind of hit her right in her face and pushed her down. And I never did give anybody a second chance, but I thought that girl, I wouldn't hurt her out, you know. So I just pushed her down, and I knew that once I did that, she'd run off. But the little rascal didn't. She got up and she come back at me. So, I know this don't sound good, but I thought, well, I'm just going to put you out of the way, all right, quick like. And I got hit like a mule kick, and I'd been boxing a whole lot, and I threw all my weight from punches. And I was actually going to see if I could, how far I could knock her. Now, Buddy Frog, he says, Wells, don't hit her with your fist, you'll break her neck. And I done brought back and started, and he jumped in between us. Just try to stop me from hitting the girl, and I hit him right in the mouth and knocked out his front teeth. And I don't know what happened to the girl. I think she then run. She found out that she was messing with the wrong person, I guess. Anyhow, I don't know why she did it, because as far as I know, I didn't even speak to a girl in that place where we was drinking. And so, I still don't know why she was right there and slapped me in the face. But I gave her a chance to get away, and she didn't take it. But anyhow, old Gullick, the one that's trying to start off fight, him and I took off in one direction, and the other 4 took off in another direction. We thought we'd better split up. But we had an idea that MPs would be looking for us. And the old Gullick and I got up our edge of town, 2 good soldiers, you know, yeah, well, we were just fine, ordinary soldiers. Here come a GI truck down the road. said, well, we'll just flag that truck down and ride back into where we staying, you know, the staging area where we at. And the truck stopped all right, but when it did, 6 MPs jumped out of the back of that truck with Tommy guns. Yeah, right on. Had 6 Tommy guns on us. They made men get up in that truck, sit down in the middle, and they had long seats on each side, and 3 on each side, and they sit with Tommy guns on us. And men go up there sitting side by side. That Gullick was a cuss, this little fella. They say nobody can out-cuss a sailor, but I think he would make a sailor shame himself. He cussed those MPs, he called them everything he could think of. And I said, oh my God, they're going to kill us, they're going to shoot us. They have Tommy guns. Every way I looked down Tommy gun barrel. They carried us to where they had a makeshift guardhouse. What it was, they rather dug Tommy's out in a mountain, and they'd taken it over and used it for a temporary jail or something. Anyhow, they put us, me and Gullick, in there, and all we had was some hay in there to set and lay on. And we had to spend the night. And the officer of the day come around and Gullick cussed him out, called him everything he could think of. And I said, oh my God, and the court-martial, orange squad. Yeah, I just knew it. And come find, it happened that Officer Day was a friend of our company commander. And he had called our company commander and told him about having us. And so the next morning, right after that night, they sent Sergeant over to get us. They'd taken me and Gullick back to the company. And of course, we had to go to the ordering room as soon as we got there. And we went in. I know as we were going in, they had Frog out there working, cleaning some weapons in his outfit, and we went by Frog. And I thought Frog was my buddy, Frog Wood. He wanted to hit that poor fella. He looked over at me and his face was just black as Ace's face, whole front face, and he grinned and his teeth were missing. I thought, my God, what a mess. And I didn't say nothing, I just kept going. We marched on in there to the company commander. And he asked us, was we in that fight to head downtown? You know, we didn't know nothing about it. He said, we were just thumbing the ride, trying to get back to camp. And the MPs jumped out and took Tommy guns on us. And we don't know nothing about it. So he said, well, okay. He said, everything will be all right. So I was going out, joining the outfits. So that's the way it ended. We didn't get no punishment or nothing. They never did connect to us, because I think what saved us was that we had split up and was looking for 6 soldiers. And they couldn't find a group of 6 soldiers. I think we might have hurt that one guy that was stoned pretty bad and he was looking for somebody. But some other people were hurt in there too, because we were throwing in quart bottles. They were busting, hitting everything, busting, glass flying everywhere. I just, some of our routine stuff like is. And of course, now these are rest periods at the fighting. I mean, we're supposed to be going back and stopping and just relaxing so we could fight in the battles instead of us again. But we didn't do much rest. If we got to go into town, we figured maybe it was the last time we'd ever get to go to town, and we just going to have a lot of fun. I know one time there in Sicily, they had, after we taken occupied Sicily, they had these, I guess taxis, it was 2-wheel cars full of horses. And it'd have a guy sitting up in there and his home people went and take them around wherever they want to go. And buggy chaise run up to the side of the horse, and he'd sit up there and hold him running, click-clack down the street. And then 2 more boys, we decided we wanted a taxi. So we hollered for him to stop, but he didn't know that we wanted his taxi. So we made him get down and we taken his taxi. 3 of us got up there. Here we was going down Main Street. We got that old horse trotting real fast, boy, and we just had time. We each had a bottle of haddock or something, lemonade, probably, quart bottles. And we're just having a ball. We're just drinking and hoping and hollering, waving, and the old horse just flying. And all of a sudden, the chaise come loose on that old horse's collar. The old horse kept going. It's the buggy, the cart went right back on the back. The chaise stuck up in there. We rolled out on the street. And you know, we didn't spill a drop of our drink. We laid there flat on our back, just dying laughing. And each one of us still had our bottle. And that old horse just kept going, kept going. We don't know if that old man ever got his horse or not. But we thought that was kind of fun. We enjoyed that. Yeah. And you know, in between battles, we could go to town. We'd kind of unwind. You know, several things happened there. Some of them we just forget about. Yeah, a whole lot of them we just forget about. Yeah, I refused to talk on the grounds that I intend to incriminate me or something. Or I'll take the fifth commandment on or something like that. That was in Sicily. Okay, it looks like, I got more time on this tape here. So we went back to England to regroup in Sicily, retrain replacements, because we had lost most all of our seasoned troops. And we getting ready to go make the invasion of France, which is coming up. And we had time to do a little training our troops, and then we had time for recreation too, which I thought that began to play soccer. We had a soccer team in our company. We thought we were getting pretty good at it. Now we were good. Now of course, you know, the English, I think they were born with a soccer ball in their hands. And we were so good, we just invited the British soldiers to come up and play with us one day. And we didn't wear protection on our legs like they do in these soccer games now. We was out there with nothing but shoes on, bridge legs. If you got kicked on the leg, hit on the leg, you just kind of bruised. That's all it went to it. It was kind of rough. But we were good, and we was telling we were going to show the British how good we were. We got there and got to playing. I don't know how long we played, but we never even got to touch that soccer ball. They just made fools out of us, and we couldn't, I don't think we even touched it. They just handled that ball just like it was theirs, and nobody else and nobody wasn't going to touch it, which they did. They ended their career playing soccer in England with the English. We never did play. I got to spend an 8-day furlough in London. Got to meet some nice people down there, and had some good times. A banker in London gave me a full crown, and that's for something very few English people have seen. It's about the same size of our silver dollar, but they don't make them, put them out in the public. They give them to dignitaries like lords and so forth and so on. They get them. But I still have that full crown that I gave the banker in England gave me. Down in London, I got to where I could get around in London just as good as the English did. We'd have those air raids there, you know, every night, and everybody head for the subways. I knew where they were. I'd go in. I was a snowball dining room and went in all the historical places there in England. Set my clock by watch by Big Ben. I walked across London Bridge. All that kind of stuff. And of course now all of it wasn't sociable. We went down sometime and had our parties there too. We didn't talk much about that. couldn't be good all the time. You had kind of let your hair down there once in a while. Anyway, we stayed in England. We regrouped, retrained for some good places. I know before the invasion, we moved down to an area where we had like a slam stockade. They put us in there, and we wasn't even allowed to talk to another company in our own battalion. I mean, we couldn't even talk to nobody for so many days. And because afraid we'd say something that some kind of information would leak out to give the Germans some idea about when we were going to hit the coast over there. And we had to stay in those things until we landed the LSTs to go across the channel and make the invasion. Right. We landed in the Cherbourg Peninsula area, and after we finally got on the beach, we going in wave after wave. I wasn't on the initial wave, the first wave that hit the beach. I wasn't on that, but I was in the initial landing, but not on the first wave. Anyhow, we had to go across the area where there's lakes. The lake was real level, and then have a road like in the middle of the lake, and the road would be built up about 6 inches above the water. And the water on each side was full of leeches about that long. You could see them just swimming all in there. We got about halfway across that lake, and Germans had a pillbox sitting over there, and they opened up machine guns on us. Wasn't nothing for us to do but jump in the water. And but about 6 inches of dirt higher than the water was protecting us from the machine gun bullets, but we had to put up with the doggone leeches. I must have been pretty dirty and filthy or something. I didn't get no leeches on me, but some of the boys did. But we finally got some supports from the rear. I guess they opened up on those pillboxes with artillery guns enough to get all that water and get across them lakes. Then we had a little town named one right after the other to take, and it was fierce fighting. Street fighting is one of the worst fightings I ever got into, because you don't know where the enemy is. He can be anywhere. And so I know one place there, I had my squad. I had got transferred into a rifle squad for the invasion. They gave me a rifle squad. I had my squad going down this here street in this town, and we heard in one of the houses some kind of racket in there. And you don't take any chances in places like that. What you do, you throw a hand grenade in there. Clear. Well, I motioned for the boy ahead of me to throw a hand grenade in there and give him signal too. Anyhow, he looked around and fixed to throw a hand grenade, and it was an old woman walking across the floor in there. She stood shouldered, real white-headed, wrinkled face, looked like she was 80 years old or more. She had refused to leave her house, but he was ready to throw that hand grenade in there before he seen it. And he said, she'd come back closer, get the hand grenade. But that's the way it was. You couldn't take chances in town. You make one mistake and probably your last one. So, I tell you, you had to be on the ball. We had run into some much stuff like that. I know in town there one time, they had to clear some houses, and buildings that the Germans were in. And the best way to clear them was to take a tank destroyer and go down the street and start just blowing every house up that you suspected the enemy to be in. But one bad thing about the tank destroyers, when you're going down the street, they had open turrets. They had 90mm guns mounted on them that shoot a 90mm gun, shell, which is a pretty good, powerful artillery gun. And they had, of course, light machine guns mounted on it too. But the Germans could slip up the side of them and lob hand grenades over in that open turret and knock them out pretty easy. They asked for a volunteer squad to go with this tank destroyer through this town, and we knew what it was. It was really called, technically it was a suicide squad. But they wanted volunteers. And I volunteered, and a captain, been fighting nowhere a long time, down in Europe. He volunteered, and about 4 more boys volunteered to go through and see if we couldn't protect that tank destroyer and let it knock out those houses. And our mission was to keep the Germans away from the tank destroyer. And I know when we were the first one in town, we didn't get very far at all. We were wrecking a little building over on the right-hand side of the street. And this captain and I investigated and seen a dog in there, a big, beautiful, long-haired dog that he had been grazed by a bullet on his backbone, and his backbone was broken, evidently, because he had a broken back. And I said, Lieutenant, that captain, I think the dog will be shot. He said, yeah, go ahead and shoot him. I said, I ain't got the heart to shoot that dog. He said, I ain't eager, I can't shoot that dog. I said, sir, you'll have to, but I'm going back to TD. Thanks, sure. And I wouldn't shoot the dog. So the captain, he shot the dog. And I heard later that that captain had killed over 100 Germans. But he couldn't, he didn't want to pull himself to shoot that dog. It was a beautiful dog, a pitiful sight, and it had to be put out of its misery. Anyhow, when I went on a little farther down the street, I know one of the worst things that happened. I was right in front. I got around and I shouldn't have been in front of that tank destroyer. But I had, must have been crossing over or something. Down on the next corner, German 88 come around the corner and just turned right quick, and there his guns was facing the guns of this tank destroyer. And there I was in front of the tank destroyer, and that 90mm gun was right up over my head. The tank destroyer, and German 88 fired the first shot, and it went over the tank destroyer and missed us. And our tank destroyer taking a little more time. He come down in the first shot. He let go, which went right over my head. I thought it took the top of my head off, but it didn't. And he made a direct hit on that 88, and it bursted into flames. And some of the Germans jumped out. They didn't get very far. And but that was close. I mean, having 2 artillery shells come right over my head, like that one fired right over my head. I didn't walk in front of that tank destroyer after that anymore. We went on through and done what we had to do. I didn't get in front of it anymore. I didn't want to lose top of my head. That's in Sicily. I mean, in France. We went off through those areas and got into the hedgerow country. Of course, we took several towns, fighting skirmishes here and there. Those hedgerow countries, I'm trying to tell you right quick what the hedgerows were. They were like a big bridge of dirt, maybe 6 or 8 feet high, or 6 foot high, and maybe 8 foot in diameter, and big bushes growing up on them. And you couldn't see through the bushes hardly. It'd be some many thick bushes. Yeah, they would be one right after the other across the big fields and things. Germans would be dug in on the other side. And they had the advantage on us because they could see us and we couldn't see them, and we wouldn't know they was there until they done opened up the fire on us. And made it twice as hard on us. Anyway, we had taken several hedgerows, my squad, my outfit, and I. And this one particular hedgerow we had got to, and I had my squad on one side, I had my squad on my right, half on the left, was on one side of the hedgerow, and I had the Germans on the other side. That's how close we were. They had a vehicle kind of like a tank destroyer with an open turn. And I had bandoliers, had two of them, across this way with ammunition. I had a rocket squad then, I could have bandoliers. I had hand grenades and that on the same side. So I pulled one of the hand grenades off and started to pull the pin, and I'm going to bop it over in that German vehicle. And I hear a racket to my right, and it was a real roar, and I looked to my right, and about 3 top high, excuse me, come a T-47 Thunderbolt, one of their own airplanes. He had 50 caliber machine guns mounted on that thing, and fire was just licking out the barrels. And I knew what that was. I knew he was firing right at us there. So evidently, I dropped my hand grenade and left it. My habit must have pulled up my left hand. I did one bullet went through here, one hit somewhere else. I got him right down through here. I dropped the hand grenade. I think I rolled about 20 feet. I stopped rolling. My left leg was foot was way up here. And I could move this arm, and I managed to feel my foot, and I got a hold of it, and I pulled it out, and got down there, and it just fall over. I couldn't set up. So I decided I'd lay back and relax, and I was going to get excited because I knew that if you went into shock, you didn't have any chance at all. I've seen too many boys go into shock after they were wounded, and I just done brainwashed myself. I was never going to go into shock because how bad I got hurt. Anyhow, the medic finally come, and he cut my wrist leg off here, and he checked my leg, and he put his powders on it and whatever band. He tried to stop the bleeding, but he couldn't. And I said, "Doctor, my leg hurts very bad." He said, "Nah, you just got a scratch." I said, "You were darn well." I said, "I pulled that leg out from under. I know it's kind of shaky." He said, "You ain't going to fight no more for a while." I said, "I know that." So he started to go to another wounded soldier. I said, "Well, what about my arm?" He said, "Something wrong with it." I said, "I don't know. I can't move it." And he cut my sleeve off. He said, "Yeah, you got your arm too." He fixed that best he could, and he went on. And I just lay there and watched the blood run down the field. It puddled up and break over and run. I just watched it. After a while, they got the Germans quite down there, and they got there and put me on a stretcher, and 2 more boys, and we got on and put us on this Jeep that fitted to carry 3 stretchers, and I was on top on the left side. We were going across the field high speed. The Germans opened up on us machine guns. And I could see down my stomach, bullets were just going across my chest, and I could see the tracers. I thought, oh my God, if it comes in one way, it'll be another way. So, when we got back there somewhere, I know I was laying on the ground, and the boy come up with new men, and got talking to him, and I asked him to take a little pistol I was staring at had Judy's picture in it. I says, "How about taking my pistol out and giving it to my lieutenant?" I said, he said, I told him, I said, he said he liked it. He said he would, and he asked me if I wanted a cigarette. I told him, yeah. He started to hand it to him. I said, "You have to put it in my mouth because I can't move my hands." And he put it in my mouth. I don't know whether I take that puff on that cigarette or not. But I just raised up and floated through the air. I just feel myself floating like I was on a cloud, and I felt so good. I didn't have a pain in the world. I just went like I was drifting from out into outer space. Then when I woke up, back further somewhere, I don't know where, anyhow, they had, like I was laying here, they had bodies like this, about 10 or 12. They had a big old hole dug back there with the grave that's fixing to bury us. And I know I was so cold, I thought I was freezing to death. I felt like I was in a ice cube. That's a furnace call. I felt like I was in an ice cube, and I managed to say something. I was like, I'm cold or something. The guy, some boy was standing at my head, and he said, you ain't as cold as these rest of these guys. They're colder than you are. And he run in a tent. 2 or 3 come out there and grab me up like a sack of potatoes. Take me out and threw me up on a table. And I had an idea they was going to grab my leg because it had drawn up like I had a half a leg there. It had gotten drawing up before I ever passed out. Or them bones shot out. And I said, put me to sleep before you pull that leg, but they didn't do it. They got an old rag to put on my head and over my mouth and jerked the leg all at the same time. The pain, I guess, knocked me out. So I stayed, well, next time I woke up from that, I was in laying in a floor of a LST going across the English Channel. And I don't know how many bodies, wounded soldiers they had in there. They had to lay on the floor. We didn't even have blankets or nothing under us. And every time that little thing would hit a swell or a wake or something other, I mean, you talk about hurt. We just, it's pain that's going to knock us right back out again. I didn't know when we hit the English side over there. They didn't know when we got into England. I know I stayed unconscious for about 30 days. I'd come to for a few minutes and passed right back out again. They didn't notify Ruby, my wife, because they thought I was going to die, and they just waited to see what the information was, the telegram would say. They kept chaplain with me day and night, 24 hours a day. But anyhow, actually it took me 6 months to get my blood pressure filled up enough to ship me on the back. Actually, I was in some hospital there in England. Found out that Frog Wood, my buddy I talked about before, he had got shot up the next day I got here. He got shot up on the 12th of July. I got mine on the 11th. Frog and I had a pretty good war record, and we was known pretty well through our outfit. We was 2 guys, we went into town, we was gun-ho. But when they come to our duty, we was Johnny on the spot. And they knew that they could depend on us, and they let us get by with almost murder, I guess. And so they had the commanding officer somewhere had the Frog moved to my hospital, put beside of me. Then we had reporters to come, interviewers. I know we made the front page of High Point newspaper, High Point, North Carolina, and tell them about us. So, Frog, he got to come back to the States before I did. I come back on the Uruguay in a flanker cast, hold my body. All I could move was my head a little bit. And Uruguay was a Luxury Street ship back in the peacetime. It was beautiful, but it was not a hospital ship. It did not have a red cross on it. It had 13 letter patients on it, 1,300 letter patients on it, plus the German crew, plus the crew. And if we'd been torpedoed or something, I'd have went right down with the ship. There's no way to save me. Or any of us is in the fighter casting. That's all my body. We landed at Boston, Massachusetts. And I got in touch with D. Wet Edwards there, my brother-in-law, wife's brother, and let them know that I I was there, and I don't know later where I'd be. So I didn't know myself. But they shipped me to ticker shelf home to Ford General Hospital, where I spent 12 more months in the hospital. They had me about ready for a discharge. The officer decided I had an ugly scar all up my leg there. He said, we want to remove my scar so you can wear a base so it won't look so bad. We're going to remove my scar. So they removed it. Wasn't long till I got sick. They thought I had my malaria fever I had in Sicily was coming back on me, so they started treating me for malaria fever. It jumped up to 105. And they could just almost see me lose weight. And I kept telling them I didn't have no malaria fever. I said I had it in Sicily, I know how it is. I don't have no malaria fever or something else. Finally they got wise and stuck a big old pin about this long inside of my leg. When they did, the inflammation went about 3 feet down the floor. And I said, oh my God. They said, get into the emergency room as quick as you can. Don't hesitate. They got me down there, they put me up on the table, and I hear the surgeon say, we can't put him to sleep, he won't come out of it. He said he'll never get him to come out of it, we put him always knock him out. He said we can't give him a full pound, he can't take cash. He said we're gonna have to give him a quarter. I want 6 people come and hold him down, 3 on each side. So they had 3 people holding me down. And I was conscious, I mean, I knew all this. And they just cut that leg open just like it's going to gut a hog or something. It felt like he used a big old hand, bath towels or something. And that information was running all up and down behind. They were just mopping it out, cleaning it. And they had, every time they go in there and touch one of them bones, and vibrations run all over my body. And Rick David in the morning, and I heard him say, now he not to be upset, no way, shape, form, or fashion, let him have his way. If he gets upset, so he ain't gonna make it. And then there, as later on, he seen that I was conscious. He said, where do you want to go, back in a ward or a private room? I said, private room. The real should have it. So he sent orders that I was not to be argued with, not to have my way. Boy, I tell you, that was music to my ears. I know one night about 11, 12 o'clock, the nurse come in and said, Sergeant, anything you'd like? I'm fixing to go off duty. I said, yeah, I want some milk. He said, all right, go get you some sweet milk. I said, I don't want sweet milk, I want buttermilk. All right, I'll see if we got some buttermilk. So she went to they had a refrigerator. I thought we had medicine. She went up there. She come back and said, we don't have any here in the morgue. That I go to the mess hall. She went to the mess hall, and they didn't have none there. She come back and said, Sergeant, I'm sorry, we don't have none here. Buttermilk. I said, the guy doesn't pay them. She said, I can't feed it, but I can go up now. I said, yes, you can. I want some buttermilk. And about 12 o'clock then, I guess, I made her go all the way up town to get that quart of buttermilk. They come in with my medicine and say, Sergeant, would you like to have your medicine? I said, get out of here. Leave me alone. I didn't take it. I take a lot of cough syrup, but it tasted good. I had a lot of cough. And so they treated me like I was royalty there. And I know they'd give me 30-day leaves. I could come to Greensboro, get home where I lived. My wife was at Judy, my daughter. And had a place I said called ORD. I'd go there and get my wounds dressed and then go back home. And I'd ride a train from Oklahoma to Greensboro. And I know Ruby come out and wife come out and stayed with me, and she made a trip back with me a time or two. And had Judy out there one time. Judy come back with us. Anyhow, at the train stations, they were back then, the war was still going on, and they had the gates locked and chain link benches around in places. The gates were locked and they wouldn't open until a certain time. But the MPs would carry my suitcases for me. I wouldn't ask them. They just come volunteer, come up and take my suitcases and go up there and make the guards unlock those gates and let me and Ruby and Judy through. And we have our choice. Get on any car we wanted, any seat we wanted. They'd put a bag up for me and see if we were seated before anybody else would get on the train. And we get to where we had to change trains or something like that. And if they didn't have a elevator, regular elevator, if it's upstairs, they would make them take me up on a freight elevator. They wouldn't let me walk up the steps. And well, they do what the MPs told them to do now. That's the way they did it. And the wife really, she'd fuss at us and wanted to make you, you can carry that suitcase. So I carried you, you can carry it. I said, let them wait on me. I said, they chased me all over your places where they said I wasn't supposed to be. I said, I'll let them do something to me. They treated me like I think what it was, they wanted to take good care of me because I was ready for discharge out of the hospital. There I was, almost died, and they had some tall explaining to do about if they'd lost me because I was outside of having that scar. I was in pretty good shape before they operated on me and the infection did. Anyhow, that's on December 15th. I got discharged out from Oklahoma and come back to Greensboro, North Carolina. And I settled down here in Greensboro, North Carolina. With my wife, baby. It wasn't too long. We had another baby born after I got back from Harvard Alice. And now, to tell you the age of my daughters right now, Judy, 50. In January, she'll be 51. Margaret is 45. 20 this month, she'll be 46. And they were born with muscular dystrophy. They haven't walked. And they're stepping in life. They, the Lord has been good to us and blessed us because it's unusual for muscular dystrophy patients to live that long, but we thank the Lord that we've had, I thank the Lord we've had them this long. They lost their mother about 2 years ago, and we kind of made it kind of tough on ourselves for a while, but we're doing pretty good now. In fact, I got things are going real good. I remarried. I married my old sweetheart I had back in girl I met in about 1937, I guess, back in Kentucky. She had lost her husband about 4 years before my wife died. She was alone. I was alone. And I asked my brother, I see her mother married my uncle, my favorite uncle. And I asked my brother to, I found out from him that her mother had been in a nursing home for several years. I said, I figured you'd go see her. I said, you tell her that I haven't forgot her and I still love her. I hope she gets along okay. And that way it come around with her and to let me know how she's doing. And that's how, by her daughter, that she had for her first husband. It was my sweetheart back up for a while. Then she worked around it. She wrote me a letter, and we got to corresponding, and she found out that my wife was gone, and I found out her husband was gone. And make a long story short, we ended up getting married, and we're just as happy as we can be. And I want to be known that she had a good marriage with her husband, and had 2 children, 3 grandchildren of her. She doesn't have in Kentucky. And she loved her husband loved her, and they had a good life. And I loved Ruby. Ruby loved me and girls, and we had a good life. The good Lord seemed fit to call them back home. And see, I think He also seemed fit for Lucille and I to get back together. And maybe to spend the rest of our days together. And we think that the good Lord has been good to us, and we appreciate wife and I. We've always said we thought the good Lord had two girls like Judy and Marty He wanted to give somebody, and He picked us, and we were proud He did. We wouldn't want nobody else to have those girls, and we love them dearly. And she was my right hand, and when she passed away, I just lost my right hand. We've been carrying on. Lucille and them are getting on real good. They love each other. Everybody loves Lucille. Lucille seems to love everybody, and everything is fine. The good Lord has been good to us. They give us a second chance for a happy life, and I think that we've been blessed. And I think my tape is about to run off here and stop. And I want to know for people to know that we talk about Ruby, we talk about Pat, her husband. They're in our conversations daily, and we admit that we'll always have them in our hearts, and we'll never forget them. And we are at ease. We're at ease, very much at ease, Lucille and I. And we love each other, and I think her children, I feel like they love me and like me. Or like me anyhow. I don't know if they love me, but anyhow, everything seems to be going so good. It's unbelievable. After 50-some years, we get together again. But nobody will replace Pat. Nobody will replace Ruby. We don't intend to ever try to, either one of us. And it's still got the red light on, and I thought it was about ready to go off. And I like to end the tape with, I don't know, maybe I want to twist a little tune or something, sing a little bit. Yeah, we feel that God's been good to us. And whatever time Lucille and I have together, whether it's a few days, years, months.
And something that's going to give you a little bit more of the dance is what I like to call it. These are going to help you a lot. From a gentleman's perspective, from the way a gentleman might look at something, these are the kinds of chains that I think really add to the delicacy of a woman. When I see something like this, nice and small, I really get that sense of delicacy. That is part of femininity. J21-258, the set of 3 necklaces in 18 karat gold. Don't forget that.